Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Category Visionaries. Today we're speaking with Steffen Vollert, co-founder and interim CEO of Volt, a global real-time payment network that's raised over $87 million in funding. Steffen, what's going on, man?
Hey, Brett. Thanks for hosting me on your podcast.
No problem. Super excited to have you here, and I'm super excited to go deep here on the Volt story. But before we do, there is something that I have to ask you about. So as preparing for this interview, I saw on your LinkedIn that you happen to own another business called Vintage Tractors. So talk to us about Vintage Tractors.
Well, I've grown up on a farm, and my grandfather was a race driver in the Bavarian mountains. My uncle was a mechanic, and we spent a lot of time fixing tractors of the farmers just in our village and around. And yeah, once Volt really took off, I thought it's great to have a bit of a therapy on the side, right? So some people go golfing, some people go horse riding, and I thought it's great to just start a tractor restoration business for vintage tractors, so Porsche diesel tractors from the 60s, 70s. That actually my engineering mentor is running nowadays. And it's really nice to do something in the real world, not just digital payments.
I've heard that from so many founders in tech. I feel like everyone's desperately trying to get something in the real world. I have a friend of mine who's a very, very successful founder, and him and his wife bought a house to flip in Lake Tahoe, and he's choosing to do the work himself for the most part, or do a lot of the work himself. He can definitely afford to have help, but he said he wants to get his hands dirty. He's like, I need to do something that's not on a computer and on Zoom calls. So that makes a lot of sense what you're saying there.
Yeah, it brings a lot of happiness, I think, just to do something that also is just non-digital, where you really can touch and feel the result, where there's a clear result as well. Like often the struggle in a digital business is that things are just never really finished. There's always something to improve. And yeah, a vintage vehicle is just at some point just done, and you can really bring it to the perfection that you aspire also in your digital business. And that's the beauty of it. So we now have about 7 or 8 employees. We have quite a few elite collectors here in Europe, and we have a partnership with Porsche Las Vegas, who are also distributing one of our vehicles at the moment. So in case you're looking for a new hobby or a fun ride for the Sunday bakery run, just give Steve from Porsche Las Vegas a call.
I was telling you at the pre-interview, I think this is like a big trend in the US is the vintage Defenders, vintage Ford Broncos. That's like the new kind of status symbol. A Lamborghini's not cool, a Ferrari's not cool. What's cool is like a vintage 1970s Defender that costs $500K. That's like the hot trend that I'm seeing right now. So I think you'll have a market in the US as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the first few buyers coming out of your podcast.
Let's go. All right. Well, let's move into what we're talking about here, which is, of course, Volt. So maybe just start with a background. Tell us a bit more about how you ended up founding the company.
Yeah, so we are 3 co-founders. It's Tom, Jordan, myself. And my payments journey actually started a long time ago. So fresh out of university, I was lucky enough to land a job at RDN, who most people are aware of as one of the largest payment processors in the world. I started there when there were around 120 people. Started in the alternative payments team, building out the payments network here in Europe with partnerships of many of the companies that now are competitors of Volt. I would say legacy competitors who we kind of try to differentiate us very clearly, the kind of approach or go to market. I went through pretty much every single team and expertise that you could find in a typical PSP. So at the point of sale, data projects, cash management projects, ended up being their VP global expansion. And around the time of the IPO, I left to start consulting for other entrepreneurs, including Ryan Breslow from Bolt.com in the US, which your audience probably knows very well. Spent some time in anti-money laundering for transactional monitoring. So really enjoyed my journey as a consultant for quite a while, but ultimately always wanted to build an own venture. And Jordan, who is one of the 3 co-founders, was back then running a fintech recruitment agency, one of the largest ones here in Europe. And I gave him a call and asked him if he has just time challenge for me. And he was already in conversation with the 3rd co-founder. And literally the next day, I found myself in Amsterdam in a room with some of the most senior payments people that I knew back then. And we started cooking up the idea of Volt.
And what was that idea you were cooking up? Like, how at that time were you describing the problem that you were setting out to solve?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So for me, there were a few items coming together, a few timelines actually merging. Actually, my journey towards Volt already started at RDN. Back then, I implemented Payment Service Directive 1, which was the regulation for SEPA and SEPA Core for debit processing, standardization of some file formats. And it was the initial foundation that then later on led to Payment Service Directive 2, which is the regulatory base of Volt. And along the journey of these 10 years in payments, I also really observed how account-to-account and alternative payment were just growing, not only in Europe, but also all over the world. Now you have UPI in India, you have PIX in Brazil, you have Fed now in the US, which hopefully at some point will really crack it. And it was quite clear that there's an opportunity to build a pan-European payments network based on this new regulation, PSD2. Historically in Europe, just if you look at the payments landscape here, there were some very local bank-owned networks like Blik in Poland or Ideal in the Netherlands. They were privately owned, screen scraping based bank-to-bank payment methods like Support and quite a few similar ventures across Europe. But there was no one who had really built a pan-European account-to-account payments network. And we thought that is exactly what we should be building. Back then, it was really, I would say, the third phase of open banking that was just unfolding in Europe. So you had kind of the initial phase a little bit earlier, where just there were startups building infrastructure inside the banks. Then you had a second phase of startups building the aggregation network for PIS and AIS, so payments aggregation, data aggregation. But we thought infrastructure is not the winning game, but productization. And that is what we had back then set out to do. Productizing Payment Service Directive 2 for the payments use case with the idea to build like Europe-wide payments orchestration for account to account. And that's what we set out to do in the initial phase. Since then, we have evolved quite a bit, and I think we will get into this later during your podcast.
Let's talk a little bit about your own evolution. So I know you've had various titles at the company, obviously co-founder being the most important, but can you talk to us a little bit about your evolution and the different titles that you've had and currently have?
Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed myself here at Volt. Initially, since I was based in Poland, I was spearheading the product and tech team as a CTO over the first 1.5, 2 years. We have actually quite a complicated founding history because we literally closed our seed round in January of 2020. And then in February of 2020, the COVID lockdown happened. So I was landlocked here in Poland. Jordan was in the Netherlands or Portugal, and Tom was in the UK. So we thought, okay, we need to structure the company around what we have. So Tom, the CEO in London, group headquarters, made a lot of sense. And me being in Poland here with the team leading tech and product also made a lot of sense. So during COVID, I built up the tech and product team here in Krakow and Warsaw. Meanwhile, we have a third office also in Gdansk. And we were racing towards the Series A. Product and tech was kind of working, but we realized that we have achieved or are very close to achieving product market fit, and that the next challenge will actually be implementing regulatory processes, implementing operational processes, serving our customers, making sure that now that we are able to win deals and get customers live, we need to keep them live. And I transitioned from CTO to COO, where I retained the remit of tech and product, but got the addition of customer onboarding, customer experience. So all the new teams we had to build to actually operate in a commercial environment. Since I think September of this year, I serve as the interim CEO. Both my co-founders have retired to private life. One of them actually now building a spin-off company in the crypto space that also will run under the umbrella of Volt.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
Let's talk about the early go-to-market strategy. So what was the early go-to-market strategy? And then how did you see it evolve into what it's become today?
Yeah, in the early days of Volt, I would say we have cut every corner we could, also based on the learnings of the ventures that we as founders had built before. So all of us had deep fintech experience, built ventures before, seen how to do it. So we really focused on what is the fastest path to deliver something that has enough value for a merchant to actually put us on their checkout as a payments option. So after 6 months, we had the initial prototype, which was extremely fast compared to other fintechs, because we really focused on what is the value add, not building infrastructure, not building things that were distracting, but really just going straight for something that's productized and sellable. Just for comparison, the venture where I served before as a GM, it took about 2.5 or 3 years to go live at all. So 6 months to having or going from nothing, from a prototype to something that's sellable is really fast in fintech. And the first customers we found via our back then SVP sales, who actually is a true believer in open banking. And he had been on this journey already for 2 years with a different company in the market. So he already had a lot of customers who were actually looking forward to see his promises come true. And it didn't materialize at his old venture. But when he joined us, he took all the customers with him and immediately knew how to get things going. So we were very lucky with our first sales hire to have a standing book and just have a true believer in what we're building. So that was the early phase. And we started getting really exciting customers. But the problem we struggled with was that open banking was just not ready for prime time here in Europe. So there was a lot of, I would say, subpar APIs on the bank sides, which really didn't allow us to perform and to deliver the product value that we wanted to get out of all this. So there was quite a bit of disappointment because we lost many of the early customers very quickly again. So quite clearly, we did not have product market fit as we thought. So we had to evolve, and we started running the playbook of companies like Adyen, Stripe, and other fintech innovators, where we thought we need to eat our way deeper into the payments value chain. So just being the payments gateway is not good enough. We need to somehow be in the money flow. So we decided to first partner with other licensed accounts or account issuers or e-money license holders so that we could also give our customers bank accounts. And that allowed us to actually measure the quality of our product, start measuring much more the customer experience on the checkout, conversion rates, error rates. And from there, you could really see that I think in August 2021, around the time of our Series A, we had true product market fit. And since then, it's just been growing.
When you think about the market category, what's the market category that you're in?
Yeah, I think evolving as a business, initially we were really focused on Europe, built this account orchestration company, productized, possibly being a B2C, possibly being a B2B2C. So we hadn't really nailed our identity and the category we wanted to own clearly yet. So we were very much focused on just building a product that actually sticks and that's delivering performance on the checkout. Initially focused on Europe, but I would say about a year ago, 1.5 years, we really achieved pretty much full execution of the initial vision and version of Volt, where we just wanted to be basically a payment method on the European checkout. And then we realized, hey, wait a moment, there are about 50 other markets in the world that implementing real-time account-to-account clearing systems between their banks. And we should just connect to all of them and really build a true real-time payments everywhere platform. And that's what we started building. So we started connecting Pix in Brazil. We started building PayTo integrations in Australia. We're working on a few other things that it's too early to talk about, but we're really working towards the vision of real-time payments everywhere on the checkout for merchants as a pay-in method, but also in terms of cash management. So being licensed in the money flow to offer reconciliation accounts, payouts, and to really just connect the world of real-time payments around the world.
Now, when you think back to this journey and everything that's happened, what do you think's been the most important go-to-market decision that you've made to date?
I think we had quite a few experiments in terms of go-to-market, a few important hypotheses that were proven wrong. It's really hard to get it right in the first place. Also, the market environment around us has changed very quickly, very dramatically. So historically, new payments instruments have their product market fit in high risk. So it could be gaming, it could be digital, it could be crypto. At the moment, we're really focused on crypto platforms where we're very successful with also one of the very large platforms from the US, one of the very large platforms here in Europe, and where we continue to win exciting merchants. So that is a definitively vertical we're very much focused on. We also really wanted to build a platform that is just inherently efficient and tailored for global merchants and global PSPs. So idea was never to go into SMEs or mid-market, but we always wanted to cater to the biggest merchants that can support and that are also attracted by our global vision and global execution. So we really focused on payment service providers. Some that I can name are, of course, WorldPay, Worldline, and quite a few orders. Right now, we should have about like 30, 40 live, some of the biggest ones in the world. That's a very important distribution channel for us. And also it really helps us to be efficient internally because like a large retail merchant or a large travel company, it really takes very long to get them live to close such a deal. The sales cycle, it's very time intense. And since we are still a relatively early startup, we really want to focus our resources on where we can move the needle for our revenue impact. While on the other side, we'd really like to partner with big PSPs that have already the customer portfolio that we find exciting for our vision. And that has been a fantastic journey so far. So we have a few very exciting brands live. Also one airline, Luxair is live with us. There are quite a few more in the pipeline. So that's also an interesting and exciting segment for us. So we really try to focus our efforts with like intention of focus on our internal efficiency of which the verticals do we address directly and which verticals do we cater to via partners. I think it's also great to highlight one failure on that for everyone to learn from. We were very excited about some of the e-commerce shopping carts, and that was just something that just didn't really work out. We saw, of course, looked at what are the competitors doing, who's building shopping cart plugins, who's going after which type of merchants. So we made a mistake to follow our competitors too closely, and it just didn't pay off. It was just a huge time sink. So really important to be focused with your go-to-market and where you focus your also engineering resources.
How long did it take you until you crossed $1 million in ARR?
I believe we did that in the second year already. So once we had product market fit in August 21, things just started flying for us. And since then, the business has been growing very nicely, very smoothly. Yeah, we were quite lucky back then.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
How did it feel when you hit product market fit? What I've seen is, there's like this idea that it's like a smooth process. I can't remember who said this, but it was a talk I was watching where they said it feels more like you get sucked into a vacuum and it's a very intense period of time when you find product market fit. What was it like for you when you found product market fit?
For us, I think we thought that we had found product market fit around twice in the early days when we kind of had it, but didn't. I still remember Christmas of 2020 it was, where we had our first big go live. It was a big PSP and it was like amazing. I was checking transactions like every full hour. Everybody was so excited. And just to discover a few days or weeks later that, there's still quite a gap on the market readiness, not necessarily ours, but that just of the banks. And there were a few iterations to really nail the product market fit. So we really just 5 to 10 merchants and try to iterate together with them towards the next milestone that we thought, okay, then we really must have product market fit. So it was a really tough journey for us. I think the true breakthrough really was just the partnerships model that we then had where we could actually see what's happening with payments, where we could see the payments journey. And then also for us, the real breakthrough was to have our own licenses to be really in control of the payments journey and the user journey end to end. And it was amazing, this feeling to be free, to really know that you control the quality and the experience of the consumers, of the merchants, and then you can be the master of your own destiny. That was great, but also that was only temporary. So every product advantage nowadays is temporary. You always need to be fast, you always need to be scrappy, you always need to think ahead. So I think product market fit is a continuous effort. It just doesn't stop.
What about the marketing team? So what have you learned from building out the marketing team? The reason I ask is most founders that I know, myself as a founder, I've really struggled with that. I think it's hard to build a startup marketing team. What have you learned from that process and that journey?
I think it's marketing in sales that's really hard to build, commercial functions. So back in the days, I thought it's really hard to build a good engineering org. But then once I spent more and more time on sales and marketing, I learned how hard it is to find good sales and marketing people. So the most important thing is that you really nail your vertical and also your vision, right? So vision and mission and vertical definition really provides the foundation for the type of people you need, for the type of organization you need to build around it. And it's also something we learned the hard way because we changed the focus vertical too often. While if you really look at it, many merchants or many salespeople in the industry are so specialized, they really join companies, payments companies, specifically with a focus for their vertical, where they have their network, and they really desire this long-term consistency and knowing that if you commit to a certain vertical, you go for the long term, not just 6 months. So that is something that we had really underestimated. We thought there's more kind of like machine built, that you just build a machine, a functional machine, and it will happen. While the reality is it's much more verticalized, and people are so much more effective when they can swim and work in a vertical where they're happy. So yeah, that was a big learning. Also in terms of marketing, I think we're lucky enough to have Irina, our chief marketing officer, who is just fantastic, really data-driven, really tool-driven, automation-driven. We have a great content marketeer, Charlie, who has been with us since the beginning of Volt. I think he's one of our longest standing employees, and he really just lives and breathes the vision, the terminologies we want to use, what we want to be known for. Yeah, and that is really great. That really helps to accelerate the story. Having people in the team who really understand the thoughts of the founders, the foundation of the business, why it was built, how it has evolved. It just creates so much stronger messaging into the market.
Let's talk a little bit about money here in our final question. So as I mentioned there in the intro, over 80 million raised to date. What have you learned about fundraising throughout this journey?
Fundraising definitely is one of the toughest things you can do in your life. So for me, it was the first time to actually raise funding. Same for my two co-founders back then. And I think we learned this the hard way as well, because we raised our seed round in January of 2020, but we were actually really, really, really close to signing a term sheet already 6 months earlier. It was probably June 2019, just the time of Money 2020 in Amsterdam. We already had a term sheet on the table and it was so close to signature. We already had declined other funds. And then at Money 2020, 3 of our future competitors announced funding and the VC pulled out. So that had thrown us back 6 months. That was really tough for us. So we went back into scrappy founder-led builders mode. And then we're fortunate enough to bump into Fuel Ventures, who immediately understood what we're building. So that was a great journey with them. Same at our Series A, where we had high conviction investors. They already knew the space. They knew exactly what's going on. They understood exactly what we're building. So EQT, it was great. And also we had, other investors that already tracked our progress over a long period of time. So Augmentum and Commerz Ventures, true believers in what we're building. And then, once we really productized and had product market fit with high growth and high confidence, we're running towards the Series B. EQT, again, another great fund to have on board. Closed our Series B or led our Series B. Definitely fundraising is tough and you really need to prepare for this for a long time. It's really important to build long-term relationships with the VCs you like. We back then really focused on finding investors that actually understand the space, that really are true believers. For us, it was much more important than the money itself. So really having partners on the other side who understand what we build, why we build it, why it's tough, why it's not going to be a straight line. That was really, really important to us.
Somehow we're already through 2024. So we have 10, 12 days left of 2024 before moving to 2025. As we think ahead, or as you think ahead to the new year, what's like the number one objective or top objectives for 2025?
For me, there are probably a few. The first objective for me is that I want to build a business that actually grows, right? So I really want to make sure that everybody has a growth opportunity in the organization. So we're fortunate enough to have a great SVP people. Emma, who joined us about 6 months ago, she has done loads of culture work for us to set the company back on track for a fantastic structured growth path where we can also invest in people. So while you're in the early days of startup building, you're just like scrambling, hustling. Everybody's like stressed and just trying to make things work. And you often forget how important it is to really focus on your culture and on the career paths of people, especially once you grow beyond 150 people, you really want to invest in them. So that is something we will really focus on in the next year. It's very important. People drive the success of the business. It's not me as a co-founder or CEO. It's just the people doing it. So empowering the people and building structures where they can succeed is super important for me. That will be a big rock item for the early part of the next year. especially since we're now like approaching 200 people and I want to prepare for significantly more. So setting the foundations right is really important. The other thing that I also find very important is to understand that when you grow beyond 150, 200 people and the product decisions you make, considering we have a fairly complex, regulated product and business, the foundations you set right now will be with the business probably forever. So getting those right on the compliance side, on the product side, these are the things that I really want to spend my time on. And it's also what I find exciting. For me, it's a lot of fun to stitch together the whole complexity and solve the puzzle. So yeah, these are the things I will definitely spend my time on the next year. And also I'm really looking forward to getting more of our customers live. We have signed a lot of really exciting deals that we will announce in around late Q1. So yeah, getting those customers live, working with them, spending time with them, innovating together. That's what makes me happy. And it also motivates me as a founder and CEO.
Final question for you. Let's zoom out 3 to 5 years into the future. What's the big picture vision look like here?
Real-time payments everywhere. So we started in Europe, we're live in Brazil, we're live in Australia. I'd love to connect about 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 markets around the world in the next 5 years, just to be able to process real-time account-to-account payments in every country, pay-ins, payouts, and then probably using crypto, stable coins, also cross-border. At the end of the day, we really want to build a real-time account-to-account network on global scale to move money instantly, overcome the legacy of systems like Swift. That is really what we're after. That's what excites us, and that's what we're good at.
Amazing. I love the vision. I really love this conversation, and I really love just what you're building and how you're going about building it. We're going to wrap here, but before we do, if there's any founders that are listening in that want to follow along with you, where should we send them? Where should they go?
I'm not yet on Twitter. Actually, next year I will launch my Twitter efforts. But yeah, please just drop me an email, steffen@volt.io. Always happy to chat, happy to meet founders. Just ping me an email.
Amazing. Steffen, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.